TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark Savage!
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff!
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah podcast. I'm excited, delighted to be with you guys for another episode where we cover all things spiritual. It's going to be good. Buckle up. We're going to have fun. Want to give a shout out to everybody listening to this podcast live, hanging out with us on the live stream, whether you're listening on Twitch, Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, wherever you are, man. Shout out. Go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from. Shout out to you guys. And a special thank you again going into 2021 with all my Patreon family, Patreon partners, supporters. This is a listener supported, listener funded show. Doesn't exist without your help. And I want to say a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you wonderful souls who are co-creating with me and helping me bring this to the masses. You guys rock. Been working on a lot, been silent, but been working on the back end a lot. We just moved into a new home, new studio setting up, literally been working on this room and this whole setup for several weeks now and still not done. But that shot a music video yesterday. I haven't really even told anybody what song it was, been working on some stuff. So within the next couple of days, you're going to see some new stuff coming out. So thank you guys for partnering with me and helping me to do that. It doesn't exist without your help. Thank you. If you'd like to support, go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of music, which is 200 plus songs. You get access to my guided meditations, Thursday night School of the Mystics, which is the community aspect to what we're building, and a bunch of more really cool stuff. Check it out, patreon.com/TruthSeekah. And a bunch of really cool stuff over there. My book is available too. For those of you who have not had a chance to get it, you can go to TruthSeekah.com, get a physical copy, or get the audio version for free. There's a link to get it for free. So check it out, TruthSeekah.com. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's discussion. We got an exciting show lined up for you. My guest has an amazing story. Her name is Paige Lee. Paige, welcome to the TruthSeekah podcast, my friend. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much. I'm well. How are you doing? Happy New Year.
Thank you. I'm doing well too. Doing really good. Wide-eyed and hopeful. So yeah, excited about the future and the present at the same time.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. I'm really very grateful. Thank you.
For sure. You have an amazing story and the work that you're doing, bringing to the table, dealing with grief and a lot more than that. But just want to get into your story. For those listening who don't know who you are, what you bring to the table, just kind of give us an overview of your message.
Okay, great. If I talk too long, you just reel me in.
Gotcha.
So, hello, everybody. I am Paige Lee, and I am a mother and a wife and all of those things. But mostly I'm here today in my role as a mother. My son, Brian, who was my only birth child, was killed 12 years ago. 12 years ago last September. Brian was a brilliant child. He really was, like Dean's List and great athlete, and many nominations to West Point Military Academy and other military academies. And so he went to West Point for a period of time and then didn't like the military life. So he transferred to USC in Los Angeles. And Brian finished his degree in economics there and then decided he wanted to pursue a career in film, of course, at USC, a very prestigious film school. And so he applied and was accepted into the film school. So he was one semester away from receiving that second bachelor degree when he was walking home one night, late at night after having a couple of beers with friends at a bar. And their apartment was just off campus at USC, which is in downtown LA. And they didn't know the area very well because they had prior to that had always lived on campus in the dorms. So anyhow, they were walking home one night and they took a wrong turn. And that wrong turn made them kind of backtrack. And in the process of trying to get on the right street, they walked by an apartment building, and the gate was open on the apartment building, a big wrought iron gate. And as the boys were walking by, Brian just kind of grabbed the gate and slammed it shut. So who would think that that would be the act that would end his life? But it was. A man came running out of the apartment complex, absolutely furious, and, who's slamming my gate? And started a fight with Brian. And they engaged in a fight, Brian kind of in defense mode, just, hand fight, right? Fist fight, whatever it is. Never been in a fight myself. And anyhow, so they ended that fight and Brian and his friends walked away, and the man ran into his mother's apartment who lived there, came back out with a knife and stabbed Brian, and just one fatal stab wound. So he died, he kind of collapsed and the ambulance arrived very quickly, but he died in the ambulance. And so that was 12 and a half years ago. He was 23 years young. And as I said, my only birth child. So I had miscarried and had a stillborn prior to this, but he was my only living child is how I describe it, because he's the only one that made it, and I'm so blessed to have had him for 23 years. But in the beginning, when it first happened, I didn't feel that joy. I didn't feel any gratitude for having had him 23 years. I was all about my grief and how profoundly uprooted I was. I mean, I was completely broken. So there's that. And then there's the miraculous part of my story, which is the healing, and how 3 weeks before Brian died, I had a dream in which my very beloved grandmother came to me and said, all I remembered was her saying, "It's okay, you'll be with us soon." And I woke up and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Like, I remembered the dream vividly. I knew then that it was a dream visit, that it wasn't just a dream, because it was so real. And I just remembered sitting at her feet. I could picture her perfectly. She was very kind of angelic looking, but still had her body and her face and her hair as I remembered her. And she said, "It's okay, you'll be with us soon." So I thought I was going to die, got all my affairs in order, the drill, right? You think you're going to die. And so I was engaged in all of that when we got that phone call at 5 a.m. in the morning that indeed it was Brian who had died, not me.
Wow.
So, and we didn't really know that at the first phone call. It was later in the morning, but anyhow, so that dream, which, became pretty prophetic, right? And then 3 weeks, that was 3 weeks prior to his death. And then 3 weeks after he died, he called out to me and I heard him out loud with my ears. He called out, "Mom." And I just jumped up and I had not been sleeping. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Brian, like, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And from that moment on, I was off and running. And it was that moment that launched my spiritual journey, my spiritual awakening. And it's just been quite a ride. So that's a summary of what happened.
Man, wow.
Yeah.
Such an
Yeah.
amazing story already. I mean, let me ask you a couple questions here.
Yeah.
When you heard him call out to you, where were you?
I was laying on my bed. I was not in bed. It was kind of mid morning. And I was waiting for my husband to get done in the bathroom and come out. And I can't recall where we were going, but we were probably headed somewhere or doing something together. And I was waiting for him. So I was laying on my bed. I was fully clothed. And I can see it like it was yesterday, even though it was 12 years ago. And whenever I hear spirit or feel spirit or sense spirit, it's always kind of from the right side of my body. And that was how his voice came from the right side. And it was loud.
Yeah.
It was
Now,
a little,
you
a little
said you were
louder.
waiting on him?
Oh, my husband. I was waiting on my
Okay.
husband to come out of the other room. Yeah. I was just kind of laying there, just waiting. I wasn't asleep.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I wasn't waiting on Brian.
Now, dealing with the grief, like, cause grief can, man, it shifts you, man. Like you're like never the same. When you have an experience and definitely with the loss of a child, for sure, it can mess with you, and push you to wits end, and obviously that's where you were. Did it reshape your brain? Like, did it? Cause like to actually be open to the spiritual world, because people like at rock bottom, they have that transformation. Something
Yes.
happens to shift them into a spiritual awakening. Like, how bad was it for you?
It was very bad. It was very bad. I was had started drinking heavily, a bottle of wine every night. Now granted, it was heavy, heavy, heavy grief for a long time, right? But the 3 weeks prior to hearing his voice were just constant tears and heartache. I was completely broken, and I would wrap myself up in blankets. I live in Idaho, and it was, getting chilly in, late September. I would wrap myself up in blankets and sit on my front porch and drink a bottle of wine and blast the music from the funeral, which I had on tape.
Wow.
And I would just play it. So just being lost in that. And it was so heartbreaking. Like when I look back on it now, it was so heartbreaking, but it's part of the process. I mean, it's part of the mourning, and that we have to go through that. So yes, I was completely broken. And it was one of those sessions, I'll call it. I had come inside because it was so cold, and I was sitting on my living room floor with my wine, with all of that. And I just screamed and I pounded the floor and I begged God to take me instead, bring him back. I call it, I was trying to negotiate with God.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. I was kicking and screaming the floor, and probably half drunk. I'm not a big drinker, but I was, in those days. And I just begged God to take me instead, bring him back, let him live his life and take me instead. And of course, God did not do that.
Yeah.
So I had always believed in God because I grew up Presbyterian. I had kind of, I had an awareness of God. I believed that God existed. I believed in heaven. At the time, I believed in hell. And, but that's it. I had no relationship with God. I had no experience, with the Bible per se, other than owning a Bible and having read pieces here and there. So yes, the whole entire experience, from learning of his death, to hearing him call out loud, to the healing and all of the miracles that have ensued since then over the past 12 years, have completely not just rewired my brain, because that has happened too. As you become more attuned to spirit and attuned to energy and kind of consciously aware of what's happening, right? I know that you understand that, and your listeners do too. So that's all happened. But I think even the most miraculous thing is that I found my son. We do still have a relationship. But more than that, I found my God and more understanding of what that means to me. And I found myself. I found my true self in this process. And that's the gift in great grief, which you can't see it in the early days. You can't believe that there's ever going to be a gift that's going to come out of your grief. But there is. And those those were the gifts that I obtained as a result of not giving in to the alcohol and not giving in to my scary thoughts and refusing to quit looking. I call it seeking, which I love. That's the name of your podcast. I say it in my book everywhere. I became a seeker of all things that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And I understood nothing. So I had a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you're laying on the bed and you hear this voice.
Yeah.
What happens when you hear the voice? And then 2, what's next? How do you engage it? How do you move to the next phase with that? Because a lot of people have had those experiences, whether it's the voice of a loved one or an angel or even the voice of God, even like you can hear it and just, okay, whatever. But then how do you engage it? Like, what's the next step there?
Well, for me, so I immediately jumped up, Mom, just seriously so loud. And I know that he was being that loud because he was trying to get through my grief, right? I mean, we all know that when we're in heavy, heavy grieving, it is difficult to hear and to feel spirit, because I think it's hard for them to penetrate so many layers. If you know anything about energy work and the layers of the body and how hard it must be to get through all of those layers,
and
right?
Alcohol's numbing you and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. So, Mom, and I jumped up and first thing I did was run to my bookcase, and I'm like, cause I'm like, where are you? Where are you? And I was listening and I didn't hear anything else. So I ran to I knew 3 things right away when that happened. I intuitively knew that he still lived, that in some form he wasn't gone. I knew that I could still have a relationship with him, and I knew that I could find him. So that was just kind of where my thoughts took me. And I immediately ran to my bookcase and I'm scouring my shelves looking for anything about the afterlife. And there's nothing because I had no awareness. I had no understanding of any of that. And, so I went to Barnes and Noble and I bought books, and I came home with a pile of books. And the first book I read was George Anderson's Lessons from the Light, which is a wonderful book where he tells basically stories of the connections that he's made for people with their loved ones on the other side. And I was just fascinated. I couldn't get enough. And, from there, I read so many books, and they're all listed in the back of my book as resources, the books that helped me the most. So I list out, I call them my healing toolbox, and all of the books I read and the teachers that helped me along the way and things like that. So so I'm just reading, right? That was where the journey first took me, was reading and trying to comprehend this like, what? What? This is like, so he died, he's in heaven. I get that, but I can still communicate with him. Somebody can communicate with him. At that point, I didn't know that I could do it myself. And so I'm going to say about 3 weeks, everything was like in 3-week cycles. About 3 weeks after that, my husband and I went to the grocery store, and I had not left my home really hardly at all because I had panic attacks every time I would leave. And we went to the grocery store, and there's this woman that I recognized in the produce department, and her son and my son had been friends, and her son and our daughter had, my stepdaughter, our daughter, had dated. So we knew the family well. And I did not want to talk to her, because one of the things that you dreaded as a newly grieving person when you venture out is encountering people and how they look at you with that sadness. But it's kind of that look of, I'm so sorry for you, but I'm glad it wasn't me. That's what I imagined that I saw in everybody's eyes. And I just didn't want to face that. But this little voice, the voice, right, Derek? That little voice said, go talk to her. I said, nope, nope, don't want to talk to her. Go talk to her. Nope. So the third time the voice said, go talk to her. And I'm like, okay, I said it out loud. People are like, who is this woman talking? And so I walked up to her and I said, hi, Carol, how are you? And she goes, Paige, hi, how's Brian? And I just collapsed. She didn't know. She didn't know that he had died. And I'm like, how do you not know this? You live in Eagle, Idaho, a small community. It was all over the news for months and months, but this was only like 6 weeks after he died. I mean, it was still all over the news. Anyhow, she didn't know. And she said, well, how can I help? And I said, unless you happen to know of a good psychic. Well, you know what's coming, right? She said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And I'm having a group message circle at my home in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, again, with the 3 weeks. And would you like to come? I have 2 seats open. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So that is what my entire journey has been spirit. To me, I use the term spirit, God, my loved ones, my spirit guides, spirit. I use that
Everything,
word.
it's all
Yeah.
encompassing, right?
I love the feeling of spirit, right? It is all encompassing and warm, and inviting. Anyhow, so I went to that message circle and I was blown away. Let me tell you, absolutely blown away. And turns out he's the same guy who lives in a neighboring community, and I had heard him on the radio years ago. And even recently, prior to meeting her in the grocery store, I had flashed on him, like, hey, there's that guy in Nampa, but had never pursued the thought. And then here he is. And he changed my world because he knew things about the actual crime that were never reported in the news. He knew the names of the 2 boys that were with Brian that were never reported in the news media. He just knew everything. And my grandfather had brought Brian forward that night. It was riveting. And everything he said was exactly right on. And this is the first time I'd ever even considered going to a psychic. And I didn't know if I believed or didn't believe, but I was shaking like a leaf. I was terrified. And he changed my world. I immediately signed up for psychic development classes with him, and I started those in January. And then, I did psychic development, 1 and 2, and then angels and guides workshop, and, right? So I just kept doing what was in front of me to do. I saw the steps, opportunities were laid at my feet, and I said yes. And I always tell people that's really the most important thing, is to be present in the moment enough to know that these are opportunities that are being laid at your feet. And if you say yes, just think of where they might go, think of what might be waiting for you. But we have to be open enough to see the opportunity and, the messages that are coming to us. And then it's our job to discern, is it good for me or right for me? And then lastly, to say yes, if it is. And that listening to that inner voice that led me to Carol, that led me to David, that led me to those classes, that led me to a year-long development circle with, like-minded souls, all of and that meeting one of the people in that group led me to a conference in Sun Valley, Idaho with my friend, which led me to a man whose wife was doing an annual retreat for moms who have children in spirit. And so I got accepted into that. Everything, one step led to another, and I just kept saying yes. And my mind was spinning and I was reeling, and it was so much information because I knew nothing. And I just was a sponge. I just was soaking it in. And I couldn't get enough, to be honest with you. And so along the way of all that learning and all that seeking that I was doing, Brian was popping in with signs and little miracles here and there. It's just some really great stories that I lay out in the book. But his main thing was sending me ladybugs. And he sent me ladybugs because I asked him to send me a ladybug, this kind of random thing that happened one day. And I got my first ladybug that night. And so I'll pause and let you ask a question.
Yeah.
But that's how the whole, it's just been a ride. I'm telling you, it's been an amazing, incredible journey that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. And you're talking about your own healing, and healing comes through many different ways in that, whether it's doing a healing session with somebody, but I think that whole path is a piece of the healing, right? Of getting in what we would call the energy, the beauty, God's grace, the presence of God, and finding healing, and knowing that you're not alone, feeling like,
Yes.
Here's my son, and now he's gone, and now I'm alone. I have people around me, my husband, friends, but I'm alone. And then the spiritual process is knowing, hey, you're not alone, that spirit beings, angels, God, everything is, you're a part of the all. And for what that does for your self-esteem. For me, when I became a Christian and had entered this relationship with Jesus, and
Yes.
I never felt alone. That was one of the key things, that I was always a lonely, depressed individual. And from that moment on, sitting in my living room, it was never just me. From that moment on, I was always with a companion, a friend, and it was God, right? That
Yes.
that right there in and of itself, just the healing that comes from this spirituality, right?
It's a peace. It's a peace that, you allow that into your heart. And yes, that's so beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I
Now,
love that.
for you, so you say that your son wanted to write this book, and you guys wrote this new book together. What was that process like? Just kind of stepping into that.
So it was a little bit of a journey. I'm not gonna lie. So years I always journaled, right? Somebody at one point said, "Oh, you should journal everything," and so I did. And I was never a journaler before, but I started to journal, and I particularly kept a journal of what I called my Brian miracles. So every sign, every time every time anything happened that was kind of supernatural, I wrote it down. And I was glad I did, by the way, because when the signs start coming a little bit less, those signs of like the light flickering or
Yeah.
the music playing or the TV pausing in midair, for no reason,
Yeah.
those types of things, they seem to come more frequently in the first year or two, and then they kind of slow down. I think some cases, the receiver of the signs is not as needy of them, perhaps. But I also think that those of us that continue the journey, we start to feel and accept and experience our loved ones in a much deeper way than receiving the signs. Although
Yeah.
the signs are amazing, and I do still ask Brian for a ladybug. I'm like, show me, give me a
Yeah.
ladybug, please. Anyhow, so I wrote everything down, and because we're always needy, right? I just had to, it's like, I'm so needy of him. But that's the relationship between a parent and a child, right? We need their love. And to imagine, I couldn't imagine, and I know I'm not answering your question, and I will, but I couldn't imagine a week without my son, much less a month or a year. I mean, I couldn't even let my brain go there. And now it's been 12 years, over 12 years. And I'm like, what? Like, how in the heck did that happen? And I think, but even though it's been 12 years and I haven't always been 100% on my journey, I've never stepped away. I've always stayed on path in some way. And always my goal is becoming closer to him and becoming better connected to him and expanding my awareness and my consciousness and my relationship with God to allow me to do those things. So that's 100% who I am and what I'm about. So when I was actually in 2010, when I was at the retreat in Sun Valley, that the woman who facilitated that retreat said, because she channeled Brian, and she said, you guys can write a book. Or actually it was Brian that said through her, Mom, we can write a book if you want to. And that was in 2010. And Brian was a great writer, by the way. He was really a very gifted writer. I had won some awards, throughout his life in different little writing contests that he'd entered. And I'm like, whatever. I just can't focus. I couldn't read a book, much less write one, for years. And then over time, because the grief is, you just can't concentrate. When you have a deep grief like that, you're just like, everything changes and you just can't concentrate on anything other than your child and where are they. Anyhow, so then I was interviewing a man, kind of a global interview. I opened a healing center, and as part of that, I was interviewing this man who was fairly well known, and I was interviewing him about his book. And I think that was when it triggered to me that I really could write a book. We really could write a book. So I sat down and started to write it, and it took probably 5 years just from beginning to end, because I'm not retired, and this is not my only job that I do, so I have other, at the time I was, I think I had retired from one career and was just helping my husband with his businesses, but we just started piecing it together. And it wasn't until And I really was doing it by way of a blog. So I was just a blog here and a blog there. And then those blogs became some of the chapters, and then I expanded on them.
I did that too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, because why not? Why
Yeah.
recreate the wheel?
Yeah.
It's already there.
Yeah.
And so the book, can I hold up the book for
Yeah,
your
go
people?
ahead. For those watching.
So the book is called Choose to Believe, A Story of Miracles, Healing, and the Afterlife. And there's a little ladybug on this stick in the sand because, the ladybug has been so prominent in our journey. But I always say that Brian really did co-write this book with me. And it became a, I guess, just a memoir in a way, but really not about Brian's life. It's about the healing, and it's about exactly what we're talking about. And it's the steps that we took along the journey, one that led to another. And it gives tools on how to survive the deepest of grief surges, I call them, and ways. Basically, it's everything that helped me on my journey so that it might help you on yours. And it was in 2019, I was like, got to finish the book. It became urgent for me to finish the book. And I'm like, okay, so I retired and hired somebody to replace me for the work I do at my husband's businesses. I had already given up my real estate career by then. And I stayed home for a year, and I worked furiously on the book for about 6 months. And then right when I announced on Facebook that I was one chapter away, I was stricken with adhesive capsulitis, and I could not move my entire arm and shoulder more than like an inch from my body without I couldn't move it, period. And it was incredible, debilitating pain for 7 months. So much for that year, right? I couldn't write, I couldn't type, I couldn't wash my hair, I couldn't hang anything in the closet. And so I didn't understand. I was so close to finishing. Why, has this happened to me? And so bring in more healing, bring in more releasing of pain, because the journey is so much about releasing pain, new layers of pain, new teachers, new healers. And then finally in January, I had a surgical procedure that fixed the movement of my arm, and I was able to proceed. So what's interesting about that particularly is that made it so that the book could not have been published in 2019. The book had to be published in 2020. So, which I find interesting because I do a little bit of numerology work, and 2020 was a 9-year for me, which is the end of a cycle. So now it makes sense to me. It's like, oh, I see why I was publishing the book in 2020, end of my 9-year cycle. I'm now in a new 1 year of a new 9-year cycle. So I get the opportunity to reinvent myself again. So I don't know why I told you that. I just find that really interesting how that worked out.
Yeah.
And I was so completely broken by the frozen shoulder, which is what that is. That I wasn't sure I would survive it, but I did. And you can only see growth when you look back on your pain, right? You can't see your growth when you're in your pain. So just like with grief, when you have some time under your belt, I always say, although time doesn't heal, time does make the pain softer. And especially if we're continuing to work on our healing consciously every day, and we consciously create who we are and who we want to be and what we want our lives to be like. And anyhow, so it was the same way, looking back on the pain that I had from the frozen shoulder.
Yeah.
So.
Man, one of the things that, just rings true for me is what you said about saying yes, and not just doing it the first time, or saying, who's there? Who is it? That kind of thing. And hearing that voice and saying yes to that, but consciously and continuously saying yes to the journey, saying yes to the process, and and following the signs, the synchronicities that are led by God, by spirit, that will bring you into your destiny, what you're supposed to be doing, and finding out what that is, but enjoying the process, all of it, the healing, the undoing, the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, and just that transformation process. If you have to say yes, Many
Yes.
people say yes and then they stop, but just continuing to say yes. I'm with that. That rings so true for me too.
And I think also, like in regard to the timing of the book, you have to say yes. And then you also have to allow things to unfold, which can be very difficult to do. That 7 months of not being able to move my arm and not being able to write were really, I was angry. I was, like it just was a bad time. But by allowing, by allowing that to be what was, because it was, I couldn't change it. I couldn't do anything about it other than seek whatever healing I could seek. But what I understood eventually was that because the healing of the frozen shoulder uncovered all this new pain, all these new layers of pain and grief, that the book was going to be a better book right at the end of that, because I was going to have, I had all kinds of new awareness and new understanding, and really much more in touch with my true self after that process. And so the book became a better book. So that's all by design. I had nothing to do with it. That's all by design of God, of my higher power, to say, no, not quite ready yet, not quite ready yet. And sorry, but this is what we're going to have to do. Because that seems to be how, I don't even want to say that out loud, but I seem to learn through pain, which I think so many of us do, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you move from being a victim to a victor, even in your own circumstances.
Oh,
to
I
not
love that.
complain,
That's
and
great.
you look at every situation, everything, every distraction, every setback as a setup that slingshots you into the place where you're supposed to be. So you're not in this place where you're complaining, and even it's a place of gratitude. It's a place of learning. Even in traffic, sitting in traffic where, usually I got to get there. I'm supposed to be there here. I'm late. I got to sit in traffic. There's a wreck up there. It's like there's different ways that we look at that now. Like instead of, getting angry, okay, there's a reason that I'm in this, traffic that, I'm supposed to be a little bit late. I'm supposed to see something. I'm supposed to avoid. Maybe that wreck would have been me if I was on
Exactly.
time. Those kind of different ways that we look at things versus being a victim to the traffic, or the circumstance. We find out, listen, that all things work together for our good. And, how can you be a victim in that situation?
That's right. And we're not always perfect. We're not always perfect in traffic, are we? But for me, that's a goal. That's a goal, is to never get angry, never get traffic angry again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
So with, tapping in the spirit and receiving inspiration to write the book and moving forward, what are some of the different, testimonies that you're getting from people? I know you have when people buy the book, they can write reviews on Amazon. That's one thing. You can go back and read the reviews and see how people are responding to the work. But whether it's that or people reaching out to you or even in person, like how is your work serving people? What are some of the testimonies that you're hearing how this book is changing lives?
Oh, thank you for asking that. I don't think anybody's asked me that. It's heartwarming and it's humbling, I got to tell you, because the feedback from people, and it's almost daily that I get a Facebook message or messenger message or an email through my website or however people are finding me, and a lot of times people I know. I'll tell you an interesting story in a minute. But they're just so grateful. They're so grateful that the book is there. They absolutely 100% are resonating with it, because our grief journeys are similar. It seems like there's so much similarity, but yet we each follow our own unique path because, our loved ones were unique, our loved ones are unique, how they died is unique, to that situation. So not all the circumstances are the same, but there's so much similarity that I just felt like when I wrote the book that somebody would be able to follow along and be like, oh, I want to check into that. What is she talking about? I can still have a relationship with my child or my husband or my parent. What is she talking about? And how can I find out more about that? Or, oh, she experienced that too. So I'm not crazy. That was another big reason we wrote the book was, to let people know you're not crazy. This is exactly, you're right where you're supposed to be. and you're following the exact time that you're supposed to follow on your journey. But here are some hints, here are some ideas. And so people have really resonated with that. They've been very kind. They are saying, I think they just want more information. So it's really been accumulating all of that and like, well, what do people want? What they want is to have a relationship with their loved one who died. That's really what they want. And so my book is a pathway toward being able to get to where they can do that. It's a pathway. That really is what it is. And so the response has been overwhelming, and very little of it is actually on Amazon. But I get it daily. And so it not always, but it often comes from places you don't expect also. So my ex-husband, who has not been on this spiritual journey, Brian's father, he's followed his own journey. He has his own path. And so we have not, since the funeral, really, we haven't conspired, or really since the trial, I should say, which was the summer following Brian's death. And we haven't communicated much. So he's not on the same journey as I am. He doesn't really want to talk about any of this. And just the other day, his cousin, who lives in Colorado, wrote to me out of the blue and said, my gosh, I just got your book. I'm only a third of the way through it. A lot of people write to me when they're just a third of or a half of the way through it, just to pause and kind of talk to me about where they're at in the process of reading the book, which is really cool. And he said, I just had to write and tell you that I'm blown away. And I believe so many of these same things. And keeping in mind, this is a very conservative family, right? You wouldn't have expected them to believe the things that I believe. And turns out his granddaughter had been killed 2 years ago in a horrific car accident. And I had not even known that. And so then he bought a book for his daughter and for his wife to help, or for it was his granddaughter. So to help them too, because my story resonated with him so much. So that was so touching because I know the family. He told me he had been at Brian's funeral, which I don't remember because who remembers that day? I don't really remember much of that day. Anyhow, that was particularly touching. And I think when I hear from people who were like me, who knew nothing. Well, really, most of them don't. Most of us don't know anything about this journey. We don't know anything about the afterlife, until we're kind of catapulted onto this journey by something as devastating as the loss of a great loved one. Yeah. I don't only like to say lost because they're not lost, but the death of a great loved one.
Mm-hmm. Have you watched Stranger Things?
I have not watched Stranger Things. Wow. Should I watch?
Well, there's a scene in I believe it's the first season, and I have the scene pulled up, but the lady Joyce loses, and she's played by Winona Ryder, but she loses her son. He pretty much dies, and he's on the other side, but he's trying to communicate, and he's doing little things like flickering the lights and stuff like that to communicate with his mom. And she's frantic. Everybody thinks she's losing her mind, and she's a grieving mother who's trying to find her son, and she doesn't believe that he's dead. And here he is communicating through flickering the lights and stuff like that. And finally, like, going through that grief and having that experience brings her back to her sanity. I wasn't crazy. See, here's the proof. And
yes,
I think the biggest proof of it all, and for you as well, like, that your life is the proof of your spirituality, your belief system, that is manifested through being more loving, being more at peace, and all of these things. And so for the naysayers, obviously, like, if you would have stayed in that place of just recklessness or whatever, it was just a part of the process that we all go through in different ways. Like, you use that as alchemy. You use that to get to the next level, right. And people can see that. And so now they come and acquire and not just read your book, but want to ask questions because they are, they want what you got, kind of thing. How did you make it through? Because not everybody does,
You just nailed it. That's exactly it. That really is. They want what you have. And so I'm committed to that. I'm committed to teaching that and to offering that. I love it. You'll have to tell me what the episode is of Stranger Things. I would love to watch it because I was like, people think I'm crazy. And that was one of the interesting things about putting the book out, was that I can't hide anymore. Everybody knows now. I didn't keep anything out of this book,
Everybody
and
knows.
there is no more hiding. So I really felt like 2020 was a year of authenticity when we were being called to really kind of discover who we are. I mean, we were kind of forced into that, weren't we, with COVID and kind of
Hmm.
not being able to socialize and not being able to follow our normal routines, most of us. So I really felt like for me, 2020 was a calling to be authentic, and obviously, how do you not do that when you're telling your life story and communications with the afterlife, right? And a little bit of channeling and things like that. So,
Hmm.
are you pulling it up? That's
Yeah,
so
I'm gonna
I
play.
can't
It's
wait to
a
watch
short
it.
clip. Maybe I won't get flagged, but I'll let you see it real quick.
Okay.
Will, are you here?
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
good. Blink once for yes, twice for no. Can you do that for me, sweetie? Can you do... Oh, good boy. Maybe I need to know. Are you alive? Are you safe?
Uh-oh.
I need to know where to find you, honey. Where are you? Can you tell me where you are? Can you please, baby? I need to find you. Tell me what to do.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
You have to tell me how it ends. I'm gonna
Oh,
have to go get
yeah,
it.
yeah. So he wasn't dead. He was taken to the other
That's
side
oh,
where,
yeah.
into the afterlife, I guess. But he was still alive, and
Oh,
so
wow.
there's like people trying to get him and all that kind of stuff. So anyway,
Yeah, up until
definitely,
that point, I was all like, "Woo!" And then I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh no!" It's like, "What do
No,
you
no,
mean
no, no.
you're not
Well, because
safe?"
he was there in body. His body was like somewhere else trapped. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's pretty emotional. Now we just watched Soul last night. Have you seen that?
I did watch it last week. Yes,
That was pretty good too. That was
that was
pretty
pretty
good.
good. Yeah, that was pretty good. I had an astral travel experience with Brian once through meditation. Most of my connection is through meditation, although I do still feel his energy, and he sends me these. He sends me these physical hugs where I receive his energy through my physical body, which is incredibly beautiful and intense, and I love them. But one time in meditation, I think I astral traveled to heaven, for lack of a better word, and was received by Brian and all of my loved ones in spirit, because there are many. And they wrapped me up in their love, and just it was almost painful. I tell the whole story in the book, and I don't want to, I know you're probably almost out of time with me, but it was an incredible experience. And it was so intense, the love that they were giving me, that it was painful to my physical body, which I
Mm.
was still aware of. And anyhow, and then right when I didn't think I could handle the intensity of it any longer, they let me go. And Brian took me and was showing me how he flies. And it was it was an amazing
Wow,
experience. Yeah.
wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing that you could feel it physically.
What's that?
I said that's amazing that you could feel it physically.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Like just, yeah, pain in my belly. I feel a lot in my belly. I feel like that's kind of I mean, I am Reiki certified, so I understand the chakra system and all that. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. Yeah. That I felt it as intensely as I did. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're in those places, man, it's like that's the real world, you know. That I think that is
Yes.
the place that is eternal. This place we're in right now is temporary, you
Have you
know.
astral
And
traveled or had an experience
oh
being
yeah,
on the other
many,
side?
yep, many,
Yeah.
many, many, many.
Okay.
And
That's
yeah, if
exciting.
you, you know, and I say that I feel like you go to the place that we go to when we die. You know, like
Yeah.
this is what, and for me it wasn't, we don't even look like this anymore. It's energy, it's essence, it's
Correct.
shapes and colors and things, and you can maybe make out stuff, but as far as like thinking that it's just gonna look like this, it's beautiful. It is energy, you know. And I've been there for sure. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know,
There's
when go
nothing
ahead.
more beautiful.
No.
I was just going to say there's just nothing more beautiful,
Oh, you
really.
come back and it changes you, you know, once, you know, no matter how you got there, no matter how you experienced it. And for me, like, just, I guess, going back to that movie Soul, like, you come back into your soul's purpose. Like, what am I doing here? When you
Yeah.
have a breakthrough experience or have that spiritual awakening. And trust me, when you know, experience that, it's, you know, you're gonna be thrust into a spiritual awakening,
Yes.
even deeper than you already thought you knew. And so it changes everything. And the assurance of an afterlife too. And that's why I really like having these conversations and talking about even the paranormal, you know, the spiritual and the paranormal, because it gives some credence to the afterlife and what happens after our time here is done. And so your
And
story and experiences, man, they just, I love them. I love them.
oh, thank you. I love them too. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that for whatever reason I was chosen to, well, I believe in pre-birth planning and all of those things, which we probably don't have time to get into, but I know that Brian and I planned this life together. I know that he planned that it would be a good possibility that he would die young. I've almost lost him two other times, and that as part of that plan it would launch me on my journey, and that we would continue, that we would really launch into our great work, right? What my teacher Sue Fredericks calls my great work, which is helping other people. And so that's what we're doing. And it started with opening the healing center so many years ago, which is no longer open, but has kind of come to the publication of the book, and then now everything's online. So I do a monthly, I just finished an 8-week series of helping people. We call it a reconnection meditation, where they can take the steps, learn the meditation. I use mantra and we use automatic writing as a way to connect to our loved one. We just finished an 8-week over the holidays weekly gathering doing that exercise. And then starting going forward, the fourth Monday of every month, we do a free, I call it spiritual tools for grief healing. And so there's no cost for that. People just have to subscribe to my newsletter to get the Zoom link. And that's on my website at paigewlee.com. It's PAIGEWLEE.com. And each month we'll discuss different tools and spiritual insights, and whatever Spirit says we're going to talk about, that's what we'll talk about. So I'm excited to be able to continue that, because the reconnection meditation was so well received by so many people, and look forward to continuing that kind of sharing. And I do grief coaching as well. So,
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
thank you, Paige, for coming on and hanging out. If people want to get a copy of the book, where's the best place to go?
probably, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any online book retailer. It is Choose to Believe, a story of miracles, healing, and the afterlife. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for hanging out with me,
Yeah.
my friend. We'll have to do it again. Thank you.
Yeah, I love speaking with you. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
You
Okay.
too. Many blessings.
Bye, everybody. Yes.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Paige Lee, ladies and gentlemen. Great talk. Spirit world, spirit realm, and how we interact with it, how it interacts with us, how we are entertaining angels unaware. And everybody has a story, man. Everybody has their experiences, and everybody holds a piece of the puzzle. And so anybody who's dealing with grief, it can change you. What the enemy meant for your harm, God can in turn use for your good. And it's beautiful to see that when a spiritual awakening happens, it's usually after what we'll call dark night of the soul. After you go through something very traumatic that changes you, it rewires your brain again and makes you open to receive. You're looking for answers. Before you were preoccupied with life. You're preoccupied with other stuff until you see how finite this existence is. You go through something, and many times, many times, it is after the death of a child that people have a spiritual awakening, or they're just at the end of their rope, and then they have a breakthrough. They have a revelation. They have an encounter, an experience that changes them forever. And so I know people and who have had that. I mean, the Bethel thing. It just recently, where the little girl died, and they were trying to raise the little girl from the dead, and it didn't work. And they got a lot of scrutiny, and even just the faith or the belief that it takes to even announce that as being they did it as a campaign. But I know people who have lost children, and they believe for a miracle. They believe for the child to come back, and they didn't. So it changes you, and we go through grief and trauma, and let it change you for the better. You go through stuff. I mean, it's almost inevitable. Many people take the easy route of drugs and alcohol early on, but even that, you find that that's not working, and you shake that off, and you say, what's next? Whatever it is. If people have caught, their spouses were caught in an affair, boom, drugs and alcohol, rock bottom, and then, okay, this ain't working, shake it off, time for an awakening. What's next? It's God. It is the all. The movie Stranger Things, I mean, again, I've just seen when she's talking about hearing that voice, and then having the lights flicker and all of that stuff, and spirit communicating with her and her son. It reminded me of Stranger Things. Then I watched the movie Soul last night. Again, if you haven't seen that, it is definitely about finding your soul's purpose and finding out why you're here. What is your soul's purpose? Real inspirational. Disney did an amazing job with that. Really good stuff, explaining the afterlife and incarnating here as different beings. Really interesting stuff. I think she was getting some flack from the Christian community, but most Disney movies do, or so it is what it is. But I thought it was awesome. We watched it last night. It's good stuff. Man, like I said, I've been working hard on my studio and my setup, and I think this is the second podcast that I've done since being moved here, second or third, and still waiting for stuff to come in, upgrading my room or my equipment and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be doing a lot more. The Thursday night School of the Mystics is coming up. Excited for that. We're probably going to live stream those, and then everybody who is patrons will be able to do like the second hour of just the patron hangout. So I'll probably do a first hour tapping in through prayer and meditation. Second hour will be just for patron hangout, Discord, and one-on-one stuff. So if you want to get in on that, make sure that you become a patron at any level, so you'll get access to that and get to all the links and that kind of stuff. So if anybody has the Patreon links and the Zoom links to join the live streams and ask questions and all that kind of stuff, feel free. I should send it out every time, but the Zoom link is the same for the most part. So if anybody wanted to jump on and ask questions, that's one of the things too that we've opened up for the patron listeners, is to be able to jump on here and ask questions during the live stream. So that's one thing you get when you catch it live, and ask questions and just hang out. So I always want to open that up too. I didn't send out the link, but if you're a patron, just go to Patreon. You'll see the link if you want to come in and hang out for a few minutes before the stream ends. You have the ability to do that and ask questions with the guests. So yeah, I want to do some more streams, man. Some more live streams. I want to just do some fun stuff too. You know, I want to do some stuff with like introducing some of my favorite music. I think I talked about it last stream, but do a stream where I'm top 10 spiritual hip hop songs, top 10, that kind of stuff, and really just hang out and introduce you guys to some stuff that inspired me. I think that'd be really cool as well. If you're not following me on TikTok, YouTube, make sure that you're joining on all these platforms, because the algorithms are so wonky. You know, one platform will show you all the updates, the others won't. Like she said, join the mailing list. I have a mailing list at TruthSeekah.com. You get a free meditation if you sign up. I don't use it like I should, but anything important, anything new, I send out through there. So make sure that you go check it out. Gothic says nothing is showing on my end. Well, it was one that was set. You got to look at one of the ones for the other one. One of the other streams that we did. So I didn't send out nothing today, but it's the same link. So it is the same link. Let me do this. I'm just gonna do this for a second. I'm not gonna tell you guys. It's a surprise. I've been working on a song. We shot a video for it yesterday. Finished mixing and mastering it. It'll be up on Spotify soon. And I'm just gonna show the cover, and I'm gonna take it right off really quick. Just give you guys a sneak peek for hanging out, because I love you. So if you want to see it, I'm not even gonna tell you what song it is. If you can read it, the text is pretty small. If you can read it, if you can't, boom, it's gone. Tease it, man. Tease it. Got new music coming out. Working on new music. So make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you are a patron. You'll be the first to hear it when everything's done. I'm gonna send the links out, make it public, all that good stuff. So make sure you check it out. That's pretty much it, man. Just kind of filling you guys in on the updates, and nothing much really. Looking forward to Thursday, another podcast Thursday night, School of the Mystics, and I'm still working my butt off, y'all. Still working my butt off as far as like trying to do what I do to make a living, support my family, and but we're still in the middle of a moving process. We're in our new place, but we have so much stuff at the other place that we gotta go back and get out of there. So that's we kind of took everything we want. There's some stuff left over, but we got to go back and empty it out. That's just what it is. A lot of work. So anyway, I'm working on a lot, creating a lot. So with that, I'm gonna say peace, shalom, love you guys. Allie, Gothic, and Christy, I had an awesome stream last night. I was in and out of it while we were watching the movie, but it was good, and I love you guys. So with that, I'm gonna say peace. We'll do it again soon, guys. Peace, shalom, shalom.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.